Hey everybody, this is Dan with Pain Free You. I'm really thrilled to bring us Paula from Virginia. Paula's had a little bit of an interesting journey. She's had all sorts of symptoms over the years: stomach issues, hip, back pain, knee pain, thyroid challenges with the thyroid levels, neck pain, even gluten intolerance. And so she wanted to share her success with the audience here and hopefully inspire some people to see what's possible. And so, Paula, thank you for being willing to do this. You're going to help out a lot of people. And so, if you would, why don't you kind of introduce yourself and start out with kind of when things started going sideways and all the medical crap you may have gone through and where you really ended up, and share a little bit about your journey.
All right, thank you. I I grew up in Ohio. My dad worked in a steel mill, and my mom stayed at home. She was a teacher, but didn't teach and stayed at home mostly. And I just feel like pain has been a part of my life, all of my life, or other issues. Not necessarily pain. My mom had neck issues. She had headaches that were crippling. So I feel like I learned pain as a child, and I was very fearful as a child. I still don't know what that's about, even though I've dug into every little nook and cranny to try and get rid of pain. I don't know where that fear came from, except for just the life around me and my personality. And so when I was
Well,
probably,
let me
go
just
ahead.
point out, sometimes if we witness a parent suffering with pain, we can just kind of absorb that fear of what's wrong with my body just by being around it. So who knows? Maybe that's where some of that fear and the anxiety about our health comes from.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with that too. And my dad actually ended up with RSD when I was 20, and it ended up in the end taking his life from that disease. So, when I look back though, I'm like, oh, I can totally see why he had that, and so long journey, but I feel like I learned that early on. Pain, was the way we deal with life. And my mom would say, grandma has back pain, I have back pain, and I just feel like, no, I don't. But it was just that expectation. I had knee surgery when I was 13, probably didn't need it, but I was nervous about playing basketball in front of people, and so that got me out of playing basketball in front of people.
Sure.
um, and then my stomach was just, it was a mess. Like, I remember my husband, when we were dating, he would like have to carry me in the house because my stomach was just so, like, it hurt so much all the time. I had every test. I had the camera down and up, and my mom was a phlebotomist for a little bit, and she would take blood to work just to see if it was my appendix, and it just this constant thing going on. So I was also a perfectionist, salutatory in my class. I wanted to do everything right, and I was good at lots of things. And so, I'm just trying to be good, trying to do right, and so all of that just really increased my pain, my body, which I didn't know. Of course, I didn't know anything about it. I just knew that I had lots of health things going on, and I also wanted to do everything well. So then when I got married and we moved to Maryland from Ohio, and my husband is very different from me. He's very laid back. Like, I was listening to your interview with Karen, and she was talking about her husband, how he's like, it's fine, it'll go away. That's my husband. Like, nothing bothers him, but he's very non-intense, and I'm the opposite. And I just remember I used to have such pain, and he would just lay down with me and just wrap his arms around me, and he would say, you're okay, you're okay, you're fine. And now, when I know all of these things about TMS, like, that he was settling my nervous system, and so as I lived away from my family and away from what I knew, it got better because I had somebody just speaking that peace into my life all the time. And so
That's great.
that helped. Yeah, it helped significantly. But it didn't change my personality. And there was still the stress of life. So stomach did get better, but then I started having children. I have 4 boys. And so, yeah, it's a fun, exciting life as the mom of 4 boys, but
Hands are
um,
full.
yeah, yeah. And I became a Christian when I was 18, and I just wanted to do it right. I didn't grow up in a Christian home necessarily, but I wanted to raise them right. I had to do the right things. They had to be involved in these things. I had to be involved. It was just like this constant state of pressure on myself. And I think
Sure.
you said one time, sorry, I talk really fast too. But you said one time you were more angry at yourself than anybody else,
Yeah,
or
that
something like that.
realization I came to a good bit later on because it's
Yes.
easy when you're trying to do the emotional aspect and figure out what's going on. It's easy to kind of point the fingers and go, yeah, I'm mad at them or that or that or my job or my whatever, my circumstance. But at the end of the day, for me, it was, looking in the mirror and going, you're here because of you, bud.
Yeah.
Not that I was in pain because of me, but where I was in life, and if I wasn't thrilled with that, those were my choices. And so
Right.
um, it's a realization that kind of helped me out towards the very end of my journey.
Yeah. And I have also realized that, and I see that I was angry because I was overwhelmed and I didn't have any tools to deal with that because I didn't learn that. My dad was, um, he was a pretty angry guy sometimes. He was, he was in Vietnam, he came back, they weren't hiring vets. There's just all of this anger that was building. And so he was pretty angry, and we just didn't deal with that well, and I didn't learn how to deal with that well. And so then, I become a Christian. I'm reading all these things. I think I've got to get rid of this anger because that's bad, which is not biblical. Like, yes, we're not supposed to be angry, but God doesn't want us to just shove it down because then it just comes out in other places, right? So there are ways that are godly to deal with that, but I didn't know that, and I actually went to a therapist one time and she said, I had just 4 small boys between 1 and 7, and I'm like, I don't want to destroy them. Like, I don't want to wreck their lives. And she's like, oh, you have 4 boys. Of course you're angry. I'm like, no, the wrong answer. That's not the right answer. And so, just trying to deal with who I was without having enough time or space to deal with who I was caused even more pain. And so I remember, when my kids were little, we played all the time. We played wiffle ball and football and baseball and all these things all the time. And I would swing them around and carry them. But I was also in so much pain all the time. I was just physically in pain all over. And, I found a functional doctor because I don't trust regular doctors, and found a functional doctor who was helping me in all of this. And thankfully, he said, we're not into labels. We're not going to label you, but for sure, at this point, my dad had been diagnosed with RSD. He was injured at work the year that I got married and left him, and so it turned into this RSD pain. And my mom was fibromyalgia and all of these things. So they had all of that going on. And so I knew that, and I'm thinking to myself, oh no, what if that's me? And so there was a lot of fear with all
Sure.
of that too. So I found a chiropractor, and of course they were the answer because, they know people like you and they can help you and they're going to make you great. And so did chiropractor, started having panic attacks. That was not fun. And I did some massage therapy, but that made me feel worse than better. Like it was more pain than it was helpful. Then I started having hip pain. So it was very localized. It felt like a knife was going into my hip. And I don't want to go into it because I don't want to cause everybody listening to have more pain.
Yeah,
But
we don't want to trigger people with horror movie style
right,
descriptions.
right. So, but
I
it
appreciate
was
that.
pain. And so I went to therapy. They wanted to give me a shot. I'm like, no, 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 thank you. So I did physical therapy and I got so much better. Like I didn't have any pain anymore. And it was my last week of physical therapy and my back goes out. I was like, because of course I had no idea that it was just one thing. It was the next thing in this cycle. Right. Um, so I was terrified. It hurt so much. My children were at this point, my youngest was 6, my oldest was 13. They were involved in everything. Like, I don't want to miss their lives, but I can't move. And so I, of course, go to a back doctor. They tell me I have degenerative disc disease. Thank the Lord I did not have like those other diagnoses that are so scary, I think I would have had a harder time, but, degenerative disc disease, and all this. And so I'm thinking, this is like a death sentence. I'm just going to be, what am I going to do? Because we were very active with our children. And I thought, I can't do any of it anymore, and I remember just sitting in the car with my husband crying and just saying, we're never going to be able to go on a walk again. We're never going to be able to go hiking. And it was just fearful, it was scary.
The catastrophic thinking is very, very common. We just project how I feel now for the rest of our life, and we just assume this is forever because we're convinced that our body is the problem.
Right. And because it just kept getting something different, something worse, just escalating. And somewhere, I was just praying. I'm like, God, you got to help me, in all of this. And he did. I mean, God is such a big part of my story. And very early on, I went back and was reading my journals because I even had a hard time going back to read what it was like then, because I was scared of what it was like then. But early on, there's a verse that says, if something like, if you have faith to believe that you can say to this mountain, be removed and be cast into the sea, and it will. And I really felt like God was saying, this is for you. And I wrote it down, and this was very early on. And so, I didn't see anything happening, and I was like, okay, great. I hope that happens. But meanwhile, just dealing with this constant pain in my life. And of course it did get better, but I was so fearful. Like I'd walk around with my hand on my back like this. Sure. And we were at a party. I mean, it was with just another family who also had 4 children. And so our 8 kids played together all the time. And we were playing charades. And one of her boys went up like this. And like, it was me that he was, acting out. And I thought, that is me. I am way too young for this. Oh my goodness. So I was probably in my 30s. And I thought that, okay, I can't do that anymore. And so I made myself not do that anymore, because it was just confirming to my brain, something's wrong. You've got to be careful, and so there's a series of, it would go away, then it would come back, that I was always living in fear of having another incident. Right. And so that terrified me more than anything else in my life, because of my dad's suffering, I think, and because of that learned pain, because he suffered greatly. And so I was just so afraid all the time. And as I was praying and trying to figure out what to do, we were at a bookstore and I saw this book called Healing Back Pain. And I was like, well, that's what I need. So I got it and I read it and I'm like, this is me. Like everything in here is me. I am the firstborn. I am a perfectionist. I am a people pleaser. I want to do everything right. My OB told me I was the best patient he ever had because I did exactly what he said. It's like, sure. Yeah, that's what you do. You do what they say. And so, reading this book was just like eye-opening. And I thought, maybe there's a chance this is me. And so I did have that reaction where I got a little bit better. It didn't hurt as much. And, I would read those success stories at the end of the book again and again. And I'm like, well, if they recovered, then maybe I can. And, mine had been a lifetime of learning fear and pain. And it's like, oh, okay. So, and then it would get worse again. And then, and I went to physical therapy, which helped significantly because she didn't give me back exercises. She gave me core exercises. So, and of course, I mean, that just helped because I was doing something and I was exercising. But then Dr. Sarno says, don't do any therapy. So I was like, okay, I've got to quit doing that. Maybe that's why I'm still in pain, because I'm doing this physical therapy or these exercises because I was out of therapy at that point. Maybe that's why I'm not getting better. So I would stop the physical therapy, and it makes me sad because I lost all of that hard work that I did because I stopped, but that didn't help. And so then I found a TMS doctor in Washington, D.C., because we were living outside of D.C. And so my husband, bless his heart, agreed to go to take me there. And so we went to see her and she talked about, she examined me, she listened to me, I had to fill all this stuff. And she said, yeah, oh yeah, it's TMS. Yep. And she said, it is definitely TMS. You can just go on, move on with your life, try and do your best, kind of things. Maybe you need some psychotherapy, which is what I was starting to think, because I had already gone back. I had journaled, looked in every corner of my brain. What am I missing? What horrible thing happened to me that I can't get better, and all of this. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I rehashed my life. But she recommended maybe that I see somebody. And so I actually saw, Arlene Feinblatt, who worked with Sarno in New York City. So bless my husband, he took me up there. We went to see her one day, and I loved her. And she agreed to be like a coach because I was in Virginia. She was in New York. So she couldn't, do the whatever. Anyway, but she was, so I had coaching calls with her probably twice a month for a couple of years. And some things did get better. Like there were times when I was better and we worked through the anxiety. Like I was afraid to go to the store. And I think Karen was talking about this too when you interviewed her. She was talking about how you just got to deconstruct that fear and break down like what's really going to happen. And she would say, so what happens if your back starts hurting at the store? Don't you think there would be people at the store who would help you? Would you help somebody? I mean, she was just like that.
Right.
Trying to get
worst case scenario. Yeah.
Exactly. And so we'd go through that. And so, and it did help. Like all of these things helped along the way. The knowledge, I just remember, and it didn't take everything away, but I remember when I was walking through the store and I was on the phone with my friend and I said, I almost started crying. I said, I think I can wear regular shoes again. Because I would always wear these supportive tennis shoes, the expensive shoes. And I was just almost in tears because I thought I could be normal. I don't have to wear it because it was at the time when all the tennis shoes were like red or orange or green. And so I always had these gaudy, colored tennis shoes. And I felt like I had to wear them because they were going to keep me from having back pain. But it just took a long time. So 2006, and I would say probably at the end of this last school year, the spring of 2021, I finally realized I'm not in pain every day. Like I don't even think about pain anymore. It's not on my radar.
Right.
So it took a long time. And so when I hear people say, oh, I've done all these things and I'm still in pain. And I think, yeah, I was too. But it doesn't mean it'll stay that way. And I think there were a couple points I think that were life changing for me in terms of my shift in believing. One was that I had a shot in my back, and I don't like shots, and I don't like anybody messing with my back. And so I went, and it didn't help. Like I came home and I was in just as much pain as I had been. And the next couple of days, it didn't get better. And at that moment, I said, if it were physical, that would have made a difference. And it didn't. And so I was like 100%, okay, this is really TMS. I'm not going to, and I did probably go back and forth, and I still do because my brain just always thinks what's wrong. Let's think about, what did you do in the last 24 hours? What could have caused this? Is there something that you did? And my brain still does that. And I just go, yeah, no, it's nothing, Sure. The other one, there's another one. And you and I talked about this, that I was on a TMS site on the Facebook page, and that's where you were also a part of that. And you were doing something else at that point too, about feeling your emotion, like just naming that emotion again and again. What emotion am I feeling right now? What emotion am I feeling right now? And so I was thinking, okay, I can do that. But some of this other stuff that was going on, it was things that would it was a spiritual conflict for me. Like I felt like I couldn't pursue some of those things that they were talking about because number one, I didn't believe those things, but also I felt like that's not what God would want me to do. That opens myself up to things that are not godly. And so I was like, I can't do that. And so I said, God, I know that there's a way to do this because you made my body. And so there's a way to do this that is not going to violate my conscience or my spirit. And so I just need you to show me that. And then, your comments would always be pointing back to what Sarno said. No, wait a minute. You don't have to find all of these things. You don't have to do all these things. It's not physical. It's coming from your brain. You need to just tell yourself that, right? And move on with your life. You don't have to keep staying in this pit of reliving and looking for what it is and why is this happening to me and what about me is wrong or what, that just keeps you in a hole, and the more I listen to you, which I mean, this probably says more about my spiritual life than anything, but the more I listen to you, the more I'm going, wait a minute, that's what God says too. Like there's these, there's a verse that says that we're supposed to think about things that are true and noble and right and pure and admirable and lovely and excellent and praiseworthy. And so if I'm spending all my time thinking about what's wrong, I'm not thinking about those other things. I'm not thinking about the good things and the true things and the right things. My mind is always in a hole, right? And so, and even over the last year, you've changed a little bit about that in saying, you don't even need to think about, you need to think about the good things and keep your mind in, how can I have fun today? And those kind of things. And that mind switch is huge to not think about it. And there's another verse that says, the mindset on the flesh is death. And I thought, and I know he's talking about it's talking about, eternal life and spiritual things, but I just thought, wow, when my mind is on my flesh, that's what it feels like. It feels like death. When I'm thinking about my pain, it feels like death. And so I need to not do that. And so what I appreciated so much is your constant pushback to, this isn't a like a woo-woo kind of thing. It's a physical thing. Like your brain is sending the wrong signal. So you need to help your brain send the right signal, and understand that there's nothing wrong. So
the brain is definitely misinterpreting the amount of perceived danger. And it's behaving as if there is a lot of danger by turning on the pain. So for a long time, you thought you had a bad back and your brain kept the pain going as if you actually did. And it takes kind of retraining the brain to go, no, my back's okay. And when the brain gets the message, it can kind of let these symptoms fade away.
Right. And I think just teaching my nervous system that it's okay. You don't have to freak out over everything, because like I would almost have a panic attack when I would get a shot of pain. And it was just that hypersensitive, hyper aware nervous system that was just ready for the moment that it was going to be, pain. No, don't do that. You can't do anything. And I'm just sad that I lived so much of my life that way. And I'm glad that I'm not living that way.
Yeah.
And another turning point came. So we moved last year. We didn't think we were moving. And then all of a sudden we were moving. Like it happened so fast. And I still struggled with pain more regularly than I do now at that point. And I thought, how am I going to pack up my entire house? Like all four of my children are adults now. Three of them are married. Nobody was at home. And so I had to do this. And I'm thinking, how am I going to do this? But we we moved twice. So we moved into a temporary home and then we moved here where we are now. So we had to do it twice. And we were in the middle of COVID at that point, and my mom ended up moving in with us for a while. So there was these stress upon stress upon stress upon stress. And I should have been a wreck in my back, and I wasn't, and I was able to keep doing it. And things like, I went to a wedding and I wore heels higher than I normally would have. And I danced like the whole time. And that night in the hotel, I was in so much pain, but I just said, and I kept thinking of you, but I said, I'm so glad I did that. I would do it again in a heartbeat. That was so much fun. And I don't care how much pain I'm in right now. It was so much fun. Yeah. And so just stuff like that, just doing it again and again and seeing like, oh, look at that. I packed up my entire house. My husband did a lot of it, but I did too, and we moved and I survived, and the pain isn't any worse than it had been. It's fine, and just.
You gain confidence.
Yes. Yeah. Gaining confidence is huge. And that's what's helped. So this year I was a teacher where we used to live, but I taught at a university model school. So it was just Monday, Wednesday, Friday that I was at school. And then I was home Tuesday and Thursday. When we moved here, I got a job at another school and I was 5 days a week. And until this year, I don't think I could have done that because I just felt like the pain would have been too much. Sure. But here I just did it. And so there were days when I had pain and I would like try and sit when I was teaching or, I could move around and things. But by the end of the year, I wasn't having pain. And like, I don't know
That's
about yours, but my pain is cyclical too, calendar year wise. Like there are certain times of year where I get certain types of pain, which is really, really weird.
I didn't really, but I've certainly heard of that. It's almost like a conditioned response, maybe wintertime. The bones, we got these perceptions of, oh, the cold makes me hurt type of thing. Some of it's just, myths, wives' tales.
Yeah.
The football player who goes, oh, yeah, my high school football injury always hurts when it's a cold, rainy day. And I'm not saying that stuff doesn't happen, but some of that's definitely the perception that cold, rainy days are painful.
Right.
And when the brain says, uh-oh, looks like rain,
Mm-hmm.
you
Yeah.
know, I'm not
Yeah.
saying it's not real. It is real. We feel the sensations, but sometimes it's the belief that those things are bad for us that causes the brain to turn on the sensations.
Yeah, for sure. So going every day, working teaching in a COVID year, which is ridiculous, moving in a COVID year, which is ridiculous. And here I come out of it and
Feeling
I'm like so much better. But I think part of it was just that I did it. I did it and I didn't have that pain and I didn't have that panic. Um, and I had messaged you last year because my thyroid went wacko when we moved. And so it was like my numbers were high. They had never been high. I'd always been low. And, I said, can thyroid be TMS? And you were like, well, I don't know about that, but you can't hurt anything by approaching it from a TMS approach. And so
sure.
instead of going down that road of the endocrinologist and the testing and the medication and the labels and all that stuff, I thought, okay, we'll keep track of it. I go to a doctor who is more open to, just kind of seeing how things go. And, and so I didn't do anything except just keep telling myself, you know what, this thyroid is probably coming from the stress that's in my life right now.
Sure.
And, it's back to normal. Like there's no issues. It regulated itself. And honestly, the things that come up, I just feel like my body is the most creative. My brain is the most creative because there's something new all the time. Like it's just
Right.
constant different things. But I can go at this point in my journey of healing, I can say, okay, is there something going on that I need to deal with? Is there something that I'm emotionally struggling with? And usually I can pinpoint what it is and that will leave, if I don't give it a lot of attention. There are things that I still struggle with that I
Mhm.
think, oh, but it could be this or it could be, and they stay around longer, But something that you said, and I think Dr. Sarno maybe has said it too, and I'm not sure who else, but even if I don't figure out what it is, there's still nothing physically wrong with me. It's still TMS. So even when I can't figure out why I'm having pain,
Yeah.
I don't have to be afraid of it because it's still TMS, even if I don't know why I'm having it right then,
And
if I
that's a
can't.
great point. We don't have to look for the trigger
Yeah.
because I'll say, okay, so you figure out that, and just for an example, this isn't you, but some people will be like, oh, I spoke to my mother-in-law and I had a flare up. Okay, great. What are you going to do with that? You're going to avoid ever speaking to her again? Right. So sometimes identifying triggers seems like the logical thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
If all you're doing is looking for the triggers and creating a list of all the things that have created pain in the past, you're going to be very inclined to avoid all that stuff.
Right.
And all avoidance does is confirm for your brain that those things are actually dangerous. What we want to do is say, none of that is dangerous. So the brain stops using pain as a warning signal to get us
Right.
away from that danger. So it's more of a let's overcome the trigger as opposed to avoid it.
Right. And fear is such a big part of that. And losing the fear has been so freeing. There are still things I'm afraid of. 2 weeks ago, I started strength training again. I was terrified. I was terrified. So, I take it slow. I'm not going to go out and, lift like my 21-year-old son, but I know myself. And if I can do it, like if I can just do 6 squats instead of 12, or whatever, I'll build up to it and I won't have as much pain and my brain will be okay with it. It's that I can't just go to the gym and like go all out because my brain still can't deal with, is that just soreness or is it pain? Like it would just be a constant in my head having to,
Yeah.
no, fine. No, it's fine. So I just know that about myself. And so I just take it slower, but it doesn't mean I don't do things.
So
And so,
what's cool is when you start to realize that TMS essentially means a hyper overprotective brain and a hypersensitive nervous system. You said, is that muscle soreness or is that something else? And pain is here to protect us from doing something that the brain perceives as dangerous. So if you work out and the next day you have typical muscle fatigue, muscle soreness, a hypersensitive nervous system and overly cautious brain is going to go, oh no, we injured ourselves. And as
yeah,
a result of that fear level escalating, sometimes the typical muscle soreness might actually feel like a pretty full on flare.
yeah,
And the brain can kind of go into a little bit of a temporary, oh no, we got problems. And
yeah,
so overall, the approach is to teach the brain that we're really not in danger. And as the brain gets that, the nervous system settles down and it will be less sensitive to typical things, normal things like muscle fatigue from working out.
yeah,
So those things are great. You made a mention earlier that the phrase that I like to use is there's no downside to a TMS approach.
yeah,
There's no
yeah,
downside to taking a calm, reassuring, trust your body approach to everything,
yeah,
even real physical stuff. Even if you broke your ankle, freaking out about it's not going to get you better faster. All that's going to do is take it longer for the pain to go away because you're so worried that it's not going to heal properly. And so
right.
there's no downside to taking a calm, I'm going to be okay.
Yep,
And
I know.
whether it be TMS or something legitimate, like I'm going to be okay is so much more useful than, oh no, I'm in trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely it is. And I think that it takes time to learn that,
Mhm.
especially if you've been, fearful since you were 4 and you're, not 4 anymore. It's been a long time. And so if it's going to, and I know you say it took me 13 years, but that doesn't mean it's going to take you 13 years. And I agree with that. I think once you know, you can do it. But I think it does take a while to retrain and to think differently. Somebody a long time ago that I was following about it, she said, I have a pain brain. And when pain brain takes over, then everything just kind of goes haywire. And I think about that. My pain brain was so large that it just had so much space in my life. And now it's not. And I'm not afraid of it anymore. And that's just key. Not fearing when my next back pain issue is going to happen is huge. And I also see that my pain was a gift. People say, well, God says we're going to suffer in this world. And I think that's true, but I think lots of people suffer when they don't need to. And I don't think a good that's not a good thing for anybody because then you're limited in what you can do. But I feel like the pain was a gift to me because one of the things that it did was it allowed me to have way more compassion for my dad and for lots of other people who have pain. Because if you've never had pain and you see people who are in chronic pain who don't look like they're sick, don't look like they're hurt, but they're hurting so much, it's just easy to blow people off or to be
Yeah.
to judge them or be not compassionate, and I had so much more compassion for my dad and my mom too, but
And
especially for my
yourself.
dad.
And yourself.
Yes. Yes. And myself. Yeah.
Because the perfectionist says, even once you find out about this mind body TMS stuff, we start judging ourselves. And I'm not doing this right. I still have the
Yes.
pain. What am I doing wrong? Maybe I need
Yes.
to double down and do more emotional
Yes.
work, more calming work, or more soothing, or how I'm not talking to my brain correctly. And
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
me. I mean, Dr.
Me
Sarno's
too.
daily reminders, talk to your
Yes.
brain psychologically,
Yep.
reject the physical. And I was like, well, I'm talking to my brain. I'm thinking psychologically. I must not be doing it right because I still got the pain. And
Yep.
then I
Yeah.
keep looking back into my past and go, well, what's that long lost repressed emotion, and how I must not have found that yet, but yet I've dissected my past 18 ways. And,
Yeah.
so we can kind of get tangled up in this. And unfortunately, a lot of people will start to buy into the belief that Sarno suggested, which is your body's okay. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing to fix. And then we go, oh, you mean my brain's creating it? Literally had somebody message me yesterday saying, I'm terrified at what my brain can do by creating this much pain. And I get it. And then we start to feel like, okay, I'm not broken physically, but I must be broken mentally or emotionally for my brain to
Yes.
be witness. What's wrong with me? Why is my brain punishing me? And I just want to say for
Yep.
you and anybody else, your brain is your best friend and it's working flawlessly. It's just working off of misinformation and bad data. It's working off
Yeah.
of the information that says you're weak, frail, and easily broken, and you've got the bulging here and the bone on bone, the disc degeneration there, and you've got all these medical label diagnoses, and your brain's believing that and acting as if that's true. And so if you think you've got a bum neck, it's going to hurt when you do stuff that's neck involved. It's just trying to keep you safe. So try not to learn about TMS and then automatically hate your brain and think you're mental, because you're not. Your
Well, I
brain's
know I can't.
doing its job, but it's so easy to fall into that trap of I'm doing it wrong, or what's
Yes.
wrong with my brain? And well, it's your brain. So
Yeah. I know. I can't tell you how many times I was like, I hate my brain. Oh, this is ridiculous. How can you be so mean to me? Like, you are not protecting me. And I just yelling at my brain. And
that's the wrong
yeah,
frame.
it
That's the wrong
is.
frame of
It
mind,
totally
because your
is.
brain's really just trying to keep you safe. It's been doing it from the moment you were conceived.
Yes. Yep. And so
That's
just
in survival. That's
convincing.
your brain's job. It's
Yeah.
just if you give it bad information from the doctors, from the media, from the websites, from social media, from well-meaning but misinformed friends and family members, your brain's gonna have a whole bunch of bad data that it's operating based on. And it's our job to correct the data so that the brain can make a different decision as to whether or not the pain is necessary to protect us, to keep us safe from this perceived, not real, perceived danger. And so, once you truly get it, it's kind of like, wow, you can see right through this. And the fear, just really, when the fear drops, we're in great shape. Now, you had mentioned before we started recording that, you had a number of different symptoms, and it's like it would go from one thing to another thing to another thing. I believe this thing that Dr. Sarno calls the symptom imperative happens because the brain and the nervous system is still in a state of high vigilance and sensitivity. But when we start to buy into the TMS knowledge and accept that, okay, so I really don't have a bad hip, for example, and we lose the fear over the hip, the brain latches onto something else somewhere else, and we have
Yes.
another symptom. And in
Yep.
some cases, it completely leaves the one spot and goes somewhere else. In other cases, they kind of are additive. They multiply. I have the
Yes.
original symptom plus something new. And why is that happening? And, it's all basically perception of danger, fear levels, focus levels. How much attention are we giving towards it? Are we solving our body problems all day long?
Yeah.
Well, it's not.
Yep.
That's kind of counterproductive. So, how long ago was it? Do you remember ballpark when you found out about Dr. Sarno? Was
I
it
would
a
say
while
it
ago?
was probably 2009,
Okay.
2008, 2009. Yeah. So it's been a while. Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe 12 or 13 years. So,
All right.
and TMS doctor, TMS therapist, just lots of other, and it's just that mindset. I think you put it so well when you say it's mindset, and we all want it to go away tomorrow.
Mhm.
And that's not how it usually works. And
Right.
I feel like my brain is like so powerful because it just keeps going to different, or it doesn't as much anymore because I'm onto it kind of thing, the next symptom, but it just takes a while for your brain to go, oh, you're really not in danger. Like when
Sure.
when it's tried to protect you so well for so long, sometimes that, it's a good thing. I think it was in healing back pain. It's a good thing that our brains don't change that fast.
Right.
So it just takes a little bit of time, but
Yeah,
it doesn't have to take forever.
Yeah, Dr. Sardo talked about how the conscious brain is quick to learn, but the subconscious is much slower.
Yeah.
And so a lot of this stuff is driven by the subconscious and the autonomic systems and just an automatic need to protect you and keep you safe. So I just did a video today about fact or fiction, which is essentially that the brain believes what we think and say most often. So you may as well think and say most often the good stuff that's going to support your recovery, as opposed to, I'm broken, this isn't going to work, I'm not strong enough, I'm too anxious, I have too much fear, I can't stop thinking about it. All of those thoughts repetitively are going to teach the brain, we can't do this. And so it's really important to take the knowledge of TMS and apply it and kind of change the script and rewrite a new script that goes, yeah, but I can do this. And so what? That was my past. And yes, I still have some anxieties, but I know with certainty my body's okay. And when the fear level comes down, that's when the pain kind of fades away. And like you said earlier, I think before we hit record, you'll sometimes realize, like, wow, I haven't really thought about pain in X amount of hours or days or whatever. It's like when you stop waking up and going, how am I doing? Where is it? And we just start kind of living our lives, that's when you know you got it beat. And even if it comes back, you're like, so what? Don't care.
Yeah. I had some this week. So I've been dealing with neck pain, and for my pain, I give it maybe a week. Like so if I'm doing something and I pull a muscle when I'm, cocked the wrong way or whatever, if I did indeed do that, my muscle will adjust, because that's what they do. If we're doing something different or new, it adjusts or it heals. And so if it's more than that long, then I'm like, oh no, you're TMS. So I've been having those, just another one of those things along the way. But I thought to myself, you know what? But I'm not afraid of it. I'm not afraid anymore. And I lived in terror that it would happen again.
Sure.
And I'm not afraid. If it happens, I'll get up and do something else the next day. I don't even when I was still having, like, when it would when I have a flare up or whatever you want to call it, when my back would go out and it would be just like I could barely move. The last couple of times I did that, I just went anyway. I took I have a little rice sock. It was my rice sock that I put in the heater. I took it to work. Like, I was like, I'm going to work. This is not keeping me home. I can barely stand. I'm going to work. I'm going to church. It hurts so bad, but I'm not going to stay home. And now I'm just like, it's fine. I'm not going to be afraid of it anymore. Fear has controlled my life for way too long, and it doesn't get to anymore.
Yeah, but fear and the attention we give to the symptoms are what fuels them and keeps them persistent. So if you have a twinge or a recurrence of pain somewhere that you haven't had for a while, if you freak out and go into the fear mode and you give it a lot of attention and you stare at it, it's going to be more severe and it's going to stick around longer. But if you do like Paula's been doing, which is saying, oh, okay, I'm not worried about it, and you kind of shift your attention back towards whatever you were doing normal things, whether it be work, family, whatever, the brain quickly realizes, oh, well, she's not concerned about it. I guess meaning the brain, don't need to be concerned about it either. And without the fear and without the attention, nothing sticks around that long. And that's simply a matter of how it works. So the more you can decide that, okay, this is TMS and I'm not afraid of it, the better off you'll be. And a lot of people go, but Dan, how do we know it's TMS? Did you fall out of a tree? No. Okay, so
Exactly.
you were sitting in a chair and you started hurting. 99.9% chance it's TMS. We don't damage ourselves doing normal household work things unless you're in a very, dangerous work job type of thing. But like injuries,
we're not that fragile.
Yeah, injuries are few and far between in reality. If you fall and there's a new pain, sure, get checked out, right?
Hmm.
Then don't freak out about it. Trust the body. It will heal.
Well, yeah, that's right. That's right.
So there's no downside, whether it be a true fall and a true injury or an onset of some symptoms that seemingly came out of the blue, whether it be stress oriented, emotionally oriented, self pressure, self judgment, whatever it may be.
Mhm.
If it's
Well,
kind of coming out of the blue, it's most likely TMS. Go
right.
ahead.
And I would say even anxiety, because I haven't had it for a while. So I kind of put it away because I don't like the anxiety. That one's harder because it's a fear response. And so you're just living with that anxiousness or the panic or whatever it is. But even when you can say, but there's nothing wrong, it will go away. Like I'm okay. There's nothing wrong with me. It's going to go away. And that one I feel like is harder sometimes because of the physical, responses to it, but there's still nothing wrong. My
Yeah.
brain can think I'm anxious. There's still nothing wrong.
Yeah. I mean, anxiety, I don't think it's a new problem to solve. I think anxiety is how we feel physically as a result of the stress hormones, adrenaline, cortisol. So if you wake up and you're anxious and you're saying, but I didn't even think of anything yet, it's probably because we've got some stress hormones in us. We may have had a tough week and your brain wakes up and subconsciously goes, oh boy, here we go again.
Right.
And then we can feel that stress hormones and, the adrenaline, the cortisol, and your heart rate goes up a little bit. And then we can literally give ourselves anxiety attacks trying to get rid of anxiety. And so if you're freaking out about the anxiety, what happens to the stress hormones? They go up.
Yeah.
So the best thing to do is to go, oh, it's an anxious day. So what? Don't care. You get up and you start your day. And before you know it, you're not as anxious. And if it sticks around, you might be able to check in what's going on emotionally, right? But don't make anxiety to be this big monster that you have to get rid of. It's just another sensation in your body of the adrenaline, the cortisol. And if it's a reflection of the stress response, the fight or flight, well, wouldn't the best approach to be to calm down and like breathe and relax and get outside in nature and smile a little bit with your family or friends or workers or whatever? Because the minute you go, oh no, I'm feeling that anxious thing, it's going to get worse.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, it is. It doesn't get better.
No, I'm glad you brought that up. That's a great point. Anything else you want to share about this journey? And
Well, I could talk for hours about it, but I just want to encourage people, don't get discouraged. Don't give up. Many days I walked through that store with my hand on my back, like, but I'm not there anymore. And I feel better in my 50s than I did in my 30s.
that's what I
Completely.
always say.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
And
always say.
I'm gonna sign up for our Tough Mudder to give myself something to do next year. And
You'll
yeah,
have to
so
send me pictures next year when you're at the finish line, completely full of mud. I did.
yeah. So I mean that's totally out of my comfort zone right now, but I can because I can. I don't have to be afraid of doing that.
There's
So
nothing wrong with your body.
there's nothing wrong with your body. And even when you can't figure out why your mind's doing it, there's still nothing wrong with your body. So
Correct. You
walk
can
in
just
that.
you can just jump right to the calm, reassuring, I'm okay. Breathe, let the tension out. Check in with your emotions for sure, but if you can't find an offending emotion or stressor, so what? You can still reassure yourself that you're okay, right?
Yeah.
Because you get so tangled up in trying to figure things out. Why did it start?
Yes.
Why did it change? Why did it go up yesterday and now it's back down lower? What? No, calm down. There's nothing to figure out. Chill out. You're okay. Teach your brain that and everything will kind of settle down. And you're right, it does take a little bit of time, but it doesn't have to take that long. I just did
No.
2 other success stories earlier this week, and both of these gentlemen had years worth of pains, discovered Sarno. 2 months later, they're like 90% better. And you're sitting here going, darn it, I've known about Sarno for 11, 12 years.
Yeah, that's the
And
dream.
I don't want people to get discouraged by hearing about other people going 2 months later, but the main difference is they were able to quickly accept it and make a decision and a commitment to themselves to start resuming normal activities, even though they still had the sensation called pain. And as they were able to do it and realize what you said earlier, well, I was no worse off. I didn't hurt any worse. That starts to build a little confidence and momentum and saying, well, I'm not making myself worse. So that's probably proof that it's not physical. And so it's really a teaching opportunity to teach our brain all that misinformation from the doctors and the media and the websites and Facebook groups and friends and family is just that misinformation. We are a lot stronger and more capable than we realize. And frankly, I just don't believe that we are designed to have chronic pain. We may have physical abnormalities. Somebody was talking about injuries and they developed adhesions and their mobility was limited. I said, okay, well, is TMS approach going to fix the mobility? I said, probably not, but you don't have to hurt.
Right.
So what if you only have partial mobility? Why does that have to be painful?
Right.
The only reason it's painful is because you think I've got a jacked up elbow, and if I move it, I'm going to damage it. Well, so I don't think we need to hurt at all. I think, the brain's just trying to keep us safe. And if we can reassure the brain that we are safe, I'm allowed to use my elbows, it's going to let things settle down. Sometimes completely, sometimes partially, but in either case, you're still much better than you were, which is a victory.
Yeah.
So I'm proud of you. I think you're doing great. Sharing your story, you touched on a lot of great points, a lot of great messages. Is there anything else you want to share with the group, with the family?
I just want to say thank you. You are an answer to prayer. I appreciate your down to earth, like this is physical approach to dealing with this. That is how I just want to know. I just want to know the facts. Just tell me the facts. So I appreciate that about you.
Very humbled. So I appreciate you sharing this story. It's probably going to take around a week or so for it to post, but if you keep an eye on the Pain for You group in Facebook or the Pain for You channel on YouTube, you'll see it post. And the success stories typically have a thumbnail that kind of has a blue frame around it. It says TMS success story. So okay. I really appreciate you doing this. I'm sure the audience is going to love it. And you know where to find me if you ever need anything. So thank you for coming and sharing your story.
Thanks. I appreciate what you do.
All right.